This evening on The Rock Newman Show, a one-on-one with former Washington, D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray to discuss growing up in Washington, D.C., being the first black member of the Jewish fraternity Tau Epsilon Phi, serving homeless youth, plus the highs and lows of being mayor. That's coming up on The Rock Newman Show. Welcome to The Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University, located in the nation's capital. I'm Rock Newman, and it is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. Vincent Gray has worked for the people of Washington, D.C. his entire life. He served as founding executive director of Covenant House in Washington for over a decade. As D.C. Ward 7 councilman from 2004 to 2011, and mayor of the district for 4 years. But those are just the statistics. Let's find out a little more about the man behind the politics. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
All right. Let me start here. I'll probably shock you, but let me start here. Anyhow, if you had to choose, you had this evening where you had some free time here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and you had to choose between playing a game of bid whist, playing a game of softball, or hand dancing, which one would you choose?
Those are tough choices.
You know it's going to be a rough interview if I start with that kind of a tough question.
You know, it's kind of hard to avoid a bid whist game.
Yeah.
That is so much fun because people talk so much trash.
Yeah, that's right.
During the bid whist game. And softball and baseball is an absolute love of mine, and hand dancing is just absolutely vintage DC. So what I do, Rock, is figure out how to do the bid whist game early in the evening.
I knew something like that was coming.
then we do the softball game.
I knew you were going to get greedy.
Yeah,
and
then we go hand dance.
Yeah, all right. So that's the answer, all three. Again, thank you so much for coming here. I remember an experience that I had where I got accused of, it was just insanity what I was accused of. And we went through a process, and it was clearly demonstrated that what I was accused of wasn't true. Mm-hmm. You went through a process of being accused of things, and at the end of the day, after being dragged through the mud for multiple years, and I would submit that it cost you being the mayor, all of a sudden, no charges are filed, the case is closed. When it happened to me, I had a sign built that said, "Vindicated." What was your response?
Well, obviously I was relieved that it was finally over with, and then there was a mixture of relief and anger about this happening. You put your finger on an important part of this, and that is that when this press conference was done by the U.S. Attorney, the then U.S. Attorney, it was right before the election. It was 1 week before early voting started, and 3 weeks before the final primary day. And I've used the term voter suppression. That what happened was people, I think, said, listen, I think this guy's going to be charged. We appreciate what he's done for the city. I don't really want to vote for any of these other folks, so I'm just not going to show up. Yeah. And the voter turnout was horrific in that situation, Rock. If you look, let me just give you one example. In 2010.
So I can do something for the viewer that just might not be aware. The U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Ron Machen at the time, had a few years earlier made certain accusations against you, and later the press conference you're talking about being in cahoots with someone who illegally funded portions of your campaign. And he gave every single impression that he had all the evidence he needed to prove that you were aware of it. And just whatever that was, 2-3 weeks before the election, he comes out and really sort of drops the bomb, if you will, to again further give the impression that, you know, you were a guilty duck. But he never showed the goods. The goods evidently were never there, because if they were there, then he would have used them. Then he would have been charged.
Well, you know, Rock, that happened. The day that he did that also was the day of the State of the District speech. Yeah. This press conference was around 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon. Right. My State of the District speech was at 7 o'clock. I actually had to change the first part of that speech in order to address what had happened. Yeah. It was a shock for something like that to be done. They have a code of ethics that they are obligated to follow that says that they don't interfere with elections. And I don't know how one could conclude anything but interference with this election. And I'm absolutely convinced that it determined the outcome of the election. If you look at the polls that were leading up to that election, we were up in those polls anywhere from 8 points to 13 points, depending upon the poll that was done. In my opinion, I think it was an insurmountable lead, and we would have been reelected, and we would have continued on with the good things that we were doing for the District of Columbia. As it turned out, we lost the election, and you know, I think it was completely attributable, largely attributable, clearly, to what happened.
As someone who has from the outside, who has been involved with D.C. politics and politicians for many, many years. So I wear that hat. As I sit here, I'm supposed to be an objective TV host.
Is there such a thing?
I don't know if it is. With that being said, I don't think I'm supposed to give this kind of opinion, but I'm going to give it. That Ron Machin stepped way across a line from what he is supposed to be doing, and he crossed that line into having dramatic influence on the outcome of an election. And I think as I look into the mirror, you know, Mr. Machin and everybody else in the D.C. metropolitan area watches the Rock Newman show. You were wrong for that, bro. You were wrong for that. That's just my opinion, and come hell or high water and whatever price I got to pay for having said that, I say it because I believe it in my heart, and that Mr. Machin and no other prosecutor should come anywhere close to that kind of behavior, which impacts an election, what is supposed to be the will and the vote of the people.
Correct.
To steer it in the way that he did is wrong. Now, I'm not saying that to say anything about the current mayor's qualifications or anything else. I'm talking about prosecutorial misconduct. And frankly, I think that those who have the ability to look closer at that should do so, and that hopefully there will be some kind of redress so that it never happens again.
Well, you know, there was a column that was done by Cobra King, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning columnist, and he called upon the Attorney General and those with her to investigate this situation. Whether anything happens or not, I don't know, but there are a lot of people who are very angry about what happened because they, like you, believe that this determined the outcome. Most people know that there is a code of ethics that says that prosecutors are not to interfere with an upcoming election. And Rock, I don't think there's any question but that this had an impact on determining the outcome. I've had many people say, look, you know, I had someone last night say to me that they were solicited, they were approached by someone for the other one of the other candidates, and the person said, look, you know, unless he gets indicted, he's got my vote.
Yeah.
And frankly, the impression was left by what was said and by what was done days before an election that I was going to be charged.
Yeah.
And of course, nothing happened in the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
And then we have a new, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Channing Phillips, who comes in, and in a matter of weeks, he goes through, examines the case, looks at the data, looks at the so-called evidence, and basically concludes that there was nothing there that warranted proceeding with this.
Yeah. People of faith, and I know that you certainly are a man of faith. You've not been bashful about expressing that. Always, try to maintain a mindset that says there's a silver lining behind and contained in every dark cloud. Very few people, not enough to have changed, not enough to have caused you not to be reelected. Very few people complain that you didn't do a good job. Your approval ratings on the job were through the roof.
They were above 60%, which is almost unheard of.
It was crazy, yes. Now, so you had every right and reason to expect going forward that you'd be able to carry out your policies in a second term. And then this bomb exploded, and in large part, it caused you to lose that election. Have you found a silver cloud yet?
No, I haven't found a silver lining in this because
I'm in a silver lining. Yes.
I was looking forward to the opportunity to continue. I go back to when I ran, in 2010 for this office. There were people who were just hugely dissatisfied with what was happening in the city and the way people were being treated. But yet nobody would step up and run. I was the chair of the council. I'd been the chair of the council from 2007 until 2010. And it was a job that I loved. I loved doing that job. I loved working with the other members. I loved working with the people in the city. It was an opportunity to do things that I had never had a chance to be able to do because I was never in that capacity previously. So it wouldn't have been horrific, for me to continue in the job that I was in because I liked it so much.
Right.
But because there was so much unrest in the city.
And I'll say it if you want, real dissatisfaction with Mayor Fenty at that time.
It was. It was absolutely a lot of dissatisfaction. And so I stepped up and said, look, I'm going to do this. I've been in this now for 3 or 4 years. I'm as closer than anybody, to working with this situation. And I don't see a lot of hope for it turning around without a change in leadership. In fact, there were people who said to me, Rock, they said, well, you have 2 options, Vince. You can run for mayor or you can run for re-election as chair. I said, no, I've got 3 options. I got those 2, plus I've got the option, which I'm seriously considering, of doing nothing. I said, this is the job I love, but working in this environment really has become so dissatisfying that I'm actually seriously considering not doing this anymore. When I jumped
you meaning stepping off from politics altogether
stepping
at
off,
that time.
that's right. Not running for chair again, not running for mayor, not running for anything, just discontinuing my role in political life. And so when I decided to get in, which was late March, early April, just maybe 4 months then left before the election was taking place, there were people who were ecstatic that I had gotten in this. A lot of people stepped up and stepped forward and whatnot, and admittedly, I probably should have made a decision sooner than I did to get in this, but I figured somebody else was going to do this if I didn't. Nobody did. And so, we had to make a lot of quick decisions about campaign managers and all that stuff, and I'm trying to be the council chair while running the campaign, and doing the other things in your life, and it was just an impossible set of circumstances that convened, on one another, that made, that created a set of circumstances in which there was just not enough time to do all that I wanted to do.
Imperfect storm.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But at the end of the day, the people of the District of Columbia spoke, and they spoke in large numbers. Right. We won that election by probably about, I think, maybe 10 points, 10 percentage points, which is huge, in an election in the District of Columbia. So I'm happy that we did it. We were able to create an inclusive environment for people. We were able to do the things that weren't being done. I promised, for example, that I was going to focus a lot on the east end of the city, wards 7 and 8, We did that. We've done economic development there. We did a lot of work with St. Elizabeth's and getting that moving to be able to do the development there, the rebuilding of schools. One of the things I'm really proud of, Rock, is we rebuilt, and we opened it before I left, is the new Frank W. Ballou High School.
Man, I was over that place.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I was beyond shocked.
It's absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's a proposal now, by the way, to rename the high school for Mayor Marion Barry, who did so much for so many in the District of Columbia. But Ballou High School, Anacostia High School was completely modernized, and we built a brand new H.D. Woodson High School. All the public high schools on the east end of the District of Columbia were either completely rebuilt or modernized during our time. Those are just some of the promises that we made and some of the things that we fulfilled. I was looking forward to being able to continue to do that, to continue to get people back to work. When I came into office, the unemployment rate, within a matter of a couple of months of me coming into office, was 10.4%, which is enormous. When we left, we had gotten it down to 7.4%. It's down to 6.5 now because it's continued to come down. And you look at Ward 8. The unemployment rate in Ward 8 was touted, if you can call it touting, was cited as being the highest anywhere in the nation. 26%. It isn't the best now, but we brought it down. We brought it down to 16%. We brought it down 10 percentage points. Brought it down hugely in Ward 7. Brought it down in Ward 5, where unemployment was in those three wards, unemployment was the absolute worst in the city. Again, you look at the economic development that's taking place. Look at the public safety numbers. We had homicides down the three out of the 4 years. We had homicides below 100. And one of those 3 years, and I will say this, included the murders at the Navy Yard, which is hard to consider that, you know, the typical public safety issue, homicide issue in the city. So if you factor that out, 3 out of those 4 years we were below 100. This year we're up at, we were, for 2015, we had 162 homicides, a 54% increase in homicides. So we were on a roll, and I was looking forward, you know, as you pointed out earlier, I'm a native Washingtonian. I was born in the city, born and raised in the city. I'm a public school graduate. I love the District of Columbia. So it was devastating to me to have the experience of having something taken away that I really felt we had done well enough to be able to continue.
You know, I think when I asked if you saw if you had found a silver lining in the cloud, I think part of what I was thinking about is the time now that you've had, well, let me ask that, I would say then another way, the time that you've had to reflect, let's talk about your future. Everyone is speculating, guesstimating, and just recently, I think it was this week, a poll was done by some of your supporters that showed
they did on their own. They wanted to do this, so I said, be my guest.
Golly gee, the Washington Post even printed it and said this particular poll shows that Vince Gray is at least has a double-digit lead on the competitor who his competitor would be, who the incumbent is in Ward 7, and also leads if it was going to be council at large. If you were to run for council at large, have you made any decisions yet about what you plan to do?
We're not, Rock. I said I was going to try to do that in a few weeks, which I will do. But I'm being urged by many people to run. There are people who, I was at a meeting last, just on Monday night, where I was a speaker, and I was asked if I was going to run for mayor. I said, well, the mayor's election is 3 years from now. I said, I'm not even thinking, that far ahead. I said, I have a policy that I never think, whatever I'm considering that for the moment. That's what's important to me. And something's down the road is just that.
Take care of it
down the road. But I have not made a decision yet. There's the opportunity, for Ward 7, where I live. And then, as you pointed out, there's at large, which is going to be, contested as well. Both of these elections will be on June 14th. It's a chance to be able to continue to do some of the things that I was working on, when I was previously in political life. And it is a serious opportunity. There are many, many people who are urging me to do this, so we'll see.
Okay. As a lifelong Washingtonian, part of what I wanted, I have a picture here, and it's from George Washington, the George Washington University yearbook. So we're going to put that up on the screen. and you're still a youthful looking guy and still play baseball and all that, but this is like it's truly a young kid here. Dunbar High School. That's been renovated and looking
Completely rebuilt.
incredible also.
It is absolutely beautiful. I was very disappointed at what was the high school that was built to replace the one on First Street.
Yeah.
That was you know, and many people described it as looking like a prison.
Yeah.
You know, it was this monolithic structure, this gray exterior, and then when you get inside, it was open space, and you know, people all over the place, and it was really an education nightmare.
Yeah.
And so when the opportunity presented itself to be able to build a new Dunbar High School that I thought was fitting of the legacy that Dunbar High School, you know, has. Because Dunbar was opened in 1870, you know, in the District of Columbia, and has I mean, the people who've gone through Dunbar High School is absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely.
It's a school, I don't think there's another high school even close to this accomplishment in America, and that is Dunbar has 8 of its graduates on U.S. postage stamps. Most high schools don't have 1, let alone 8. And if you go to the
That's a startling.
It's incredible.
That's a surprising, startling number.
Yeah, and you look at who they are. They
are. Can you remember them?
Scientists, Charles Drew. They're just phenomenal people. You know,
Graduates of Dunbar High School.
Graduates of Dunbar High School, who then went on to have enormous accomplishments. A lot of people don't realize the first U.S. senator, African-American U.S. senator, was a graduate of Dunbar High School, Brooke, Senator Brooke, who represented Massachusetts. Right. So they're just phenomenal graduates. And Rock, to see that building that, you know, was there to be Dunbar High School, it was not fitting of what Dunbar High School has contributed to this nation. Yeah. We now have a brand new school. It is now in its 3rd year. Yeah. We finished it 2 years ago.
Beautiful complex.
Beautiful. Yeah. And the athletic facilities are fantastic. Yeah. So it's something that people can feel proud of walking up to.
Sure. So again, as a lifelong Washingtonian, I have a few names that I would like for you to respond to.
Okay.
This one will probably be a surprise to you. O'Roy Chalk.
He was the D.C. Transit guy.
That's right.
Who was hated.
Very much so.
There were strikes. It was when the metro system, as we call it now, was privately run, and what it was a bus system.
Sure.
And there were people who, you know, who didn't like the quality of the service. There were people who didn't like the way that folks were paid. They didn't like the way folks were treated on the buses in the District of Columbia. And it was a hallelujah day when O'Roy Chalk left.
I remember that. I remember that. Ralph Waldo Petey Greene.
Well, Petey Greene was a character. Petey Greene made an enormous contribution to the District of Columbia. What is his famous line? Rapping with Petey Greene.
That's right.
And Petey was on the radio. Petey was on TV. And of course, they did a movie about his.
Talk to me. He and Dewey Hughes' relationship.
That's right. He did the movie. And
tell it to the hot, tell it to the old.
That's right. That's right. That's Petey.
Yeah.
And everybody knew and loved Petey Greene. I mean, you know, in the movie, he's portrayed properly so as having been at Lorton.
Sure.
Came out and had a great. He had a great career, you know, on the radio. I guess it was WOL.
WOL, yeah. And then did some TV stuff.
Yeah, he did.
I'll never forget him breaking up that watermelon and telling people that they didn't have to be ashamed of eating watermelon like they did back in the day.
Only Petey could do that.
Only Howard Stern, who, you know, dubbed himself as
Shock TV
as the king of all media.
Shock Radio, I guess.
Said that you know, he got a lot of his stuff from Petey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understandably so.
Speaking of beloved DC figures, the godfather of go-go.
Yes, Chuck
Brown.
Chuck Brown. Chuck Brown was absolutely one of the most wonderful people we've ever had in this city. You know, we have a lot of monuments You know, we have the Lincoln Memorial, we have the Jefferson, we have the Washington. All of those, however, are devoted to national figures.
Yeah.
Chuck made such a contribution to the city. He literally is the father of go-go. He created go-go.
Yeah.
And when he passed away, I said to folks, I said, you know what? We've got to remember. We've got to do something to remember Chuck. And we're going to work to build a memorial, to build a monument to him. And we've now finished and opened a tribute, a monument to Chuck over on 20th and Evart Street, Northeast, which is in one of our you know, solid neighborhoods in the District of Columbia. And if you go through there, you will see exhibits about Chuck's life, about the songs, the writing he did, the music that he played. You'll just see a lot about his life and what he did to bring a musical genre to the District of Columbia that had not existed. And now, you know, obviously go-go has gone national, gone international at this stage.
I remember leaving his funeral, feeling really, really sad. It was an incredible service.
Yes, it was.
With
at the convention
a
center.
who's who of anybody in Washington, D.C., nationally and otherwise. I remember Mike Epps telling a hysterical joke about Chuck and Marion Barry.
Yeah.
And
I brought down the house, didn't it?
and where to get some of their feel good.
Right.
how Chuck once got some of his feel good. As I was driving away from the service at the convention center, I had a sense of sadness. And I think that what brought it about was thinking about how this city is sort of becoming, or has become more and more gentrified, and between black and white, more polarized. But at a Chuck Brown concert, it was as if there weren't any labels on anybody. Right. It was as if it didn't matter, rich, poor, black, white, foreign, or otherwise. When you came to a Chuck Brown concert, unlike most things, football kind of sports can do that, but a Chuck Brown concert brought together people and it appeared to me where they momentarily forgot all of their differences and became one. That's a hell of a testament to Chuck.
Absolutely, and that's the kind of person Chuck was. You know, anybody that knew Chuck knew that he had an enormously high level of humility. Yeah. I was with Chuck one day when there was a dedication of right up by the Howard Theater of T Street in his name. And this is a man who is enormously accomplished, who has done so much, you know, done so many things as a part of his legacy. And he was so humble that day that the city would take the opportunity to be able to name a street, you know, for Chuck Brown. Yeah. You could see it. You could see it in his eyes. You could hear it in his voice. He was close to tearing up as a result of that. I wish Chuck could see, and maybe he can, you know, maybe from heaven. Sure. Chuck is looking down on that monument and seeing that, how much we love him, how much we love his music, and how much we love what he did for this city. He did something in this city that will forever be an imprint on the District of Columbia, you know, because we are Washington, and we are, you know, we're the federal city, but we're the District of Columbia also, hopefully one day to be a state, but right now we're the District of Columbia. And Chuck left his imprint, he left his fingerprints on this city in a way that absolutely are indelible.
Just even when you think about that D.C. is known now around the world for a particular style and genre of music. And my feeling is it will only get bigger and export it more. And again, sort of Chuck's baby.
Well, and look at all the talent that he spawned.
Oh yeah.
You know, I run into people, you know, in the grocery store and whatnot who came out of the mold of Chuck Brown playing go-go music. I mean, you can't do anything if you can't pat your foot when you know when go-go music. You got to. You just got to. It's almost reflexive. Don't mean a thing if it don't got the go-go swing.
There you go. Mayor for life, Marion S. Barry.
a phenomenal, phenomenal human being. Marion Barry, hopefully, as time continues to wear on, will be remembered for the things that he did. I mean, there's so many people who across this city that you meet will say, I got my first job from Marion Barry.
Yeah.
You know, because he created the Summer Youth Employment Program.
Right.
You know, and I was proud to be able to continue it as those before me did, and hopefully everybody after, you know, me will do the same thing, to make sure that every young person is able to get a summer job. Right. In fact, one of the things that we started to do was to integrate the Summer Youth Employment Program with the curricula that these young people were engaged in who are at the high school level. Let's figure out, you know, it's how to make, we put them in jobs that will help them be able to build on the classes, the curricula that they're engaged in, especially in high school. One of the things that we did was we've reestablished what used to be called vocational education, called career and technical education. And we're trying, the city is trying to build, we started working on this and did it with a number of young people, and that is making sure that whatever field of study they were engaged in high school, their summer jobs would tie in with that. And that's one of the things that, that Marion was responsible for. Frankly, there are so many people who have professional careers because Marion opened the door to African Americans in the District of Columbia who might otherwise not have had those chances. You know, those things are taken for granted at this point. But when you think about when he came along, you know, he was on the first council, I guess it was, of the District of Columbia. He was the second elected mayor, and some of those vestiges of the past were still very much there.
Oh, it was Southern. It was
absolutely.
This was the old Southern boy,
absolutely
Southern run city.
That's right.
Yeah, and here's this guy coming in with the big afro and the dashiki.
That's right.
and got shot. And got shot down at City Hall.
That's right. He was caught in that Hanafi Muslim situation where. I guess he was getting off the elevator, and they'd taken over the Wilson Building, and he got shot. And thankfully, he wasn't hurt any worse than he was in that situation. But he obviously was one of the leaders in the civil rights movement, and he brought that commitment, that effort to the District of Columbia in his political leadership. You know, if you go back, of course, you know that Marion was the guy who started Pride. He and Catfish Mayfield started Pride and created jobs for young people. And then, as brilliant as Marion was, a lot of people don't realize that Marion, if he had done his dissertation, he would have a PhD in chemistry. Right. He's brilliant. Yeah. And so, he then realized that he could make the greatest impact that he could make by going in and becoming a policymaker himself. First as a council, first as a Board of Education president, then as a council
And that was
member.
after being head of SNCC.
That's right. That's right. And then eventually, of course, he ran for mayor and served, as it turned out, he served 4 terms as mayor.
On more than one occasion, I've had lunch, breakfast, or dinner, we both like to eat, with someone who, when he talks about you, I think each time he comes close to tearing up in terms of how much love, respect, appreciation, admiration, and friendship that he has for you. His name is Bruce Bariano.
Yeah, my fraternity brother. Bruce Bariano is a wonderful, wonderful human being. He is one of the most giving people that I have ever met. I met Bruce in college. Yeah. I think you mentioned it earlier about I was the first African American in a fraternity at George Washington University. Right. And Bruce was one of the people in that fraternity who helped to open the door to me. I not only was the first African American in fraternity, I actually was elected president, the chancellor of that fraternity.
And what are we talking, late 50s, early 60s?
No, this is in the 60s. Yes, in the 60s. And George Washington University, in the shadow of the White House, was a bastion of racism in those days. Yeah. And frankly, it doesn't sound like much now to be the president of a of a fraternity that was all white in those days. But it was a big deal in those days. I was told.
I brought his name up because I'm always appreciative of understanding people, and this would be a Caucasian individual
Yeah.
who stood up
He stood up. That's right.
to the status quo at that
That's right.
time to make a difference.
And he still stands up to it. Bruce is a phenomenal human being, as I said earlier, Rock. And he and some other people stood up to the status quo.
Yeah.
At that point, the status quo was, well, you might be able to get in school here, but you know you can't participate in. The basketball team was segregated in those days.
Yeah.
And I was actually a pretty decent player. We wound up having a team in the university that was better than the varsity.
Wow. Yeah.
We had a guy who played with us. I don't know if you remember the name Gary Lyle.
Absolutely.
Gary was on our team.
Wow.
Gary played football.
Yeah.
He was the first football player, African American at GW. Went on to play 8 years with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
We had Norm Neverson who played with us. Kenny Dorian. So in any event, there were doors that were opened up, and Bruce was one of those people who helped to open those doors for African Americans, especially me at George Washington University.
You know, we already talked about Marion. One of the last conversations I had with Marion was talking about the homeless problem in the district. And if Marion was anything, he was optimistic and upbeat. And he always kind of saw a brighter day. You know, no matter what, with all of his frailties, you know, he would say, you know, night ain't about getting knocked down, it's about getting up. And he always got up.
Yeah.
I remember being at Georgina's or Players Lounge, and someone said about 6 months before Marion died, someone said, "Hey, I heard Marion Barry was real sick," and somebody said, "Well, I heard he died," and so the person said, "Until you see the casket going in the ground, don't count him out. Don't count him out because he's got, you know, way more than 9 lives." So the point I'm making of his sense of optimism, but when I was talking to him about the homeless population in D.C., it was almost as if that was something that he couldn't figure out how it was going to change, and it was something that pained him. And he quite didn't have an answer. Most things Marion would give you an answer for, but he didn't have an answer for that. And I don't think things have gotten any better. I think they've gotten a little worse.
No, it's a hugely challenging problem, Rock, and we need to recognize, first of all, that probably at least 3 populations of homeless people. It isn't one, homogeneous group of people. You got homeless families, and the city is now working. We started the process, and the process hopefully is continuing to be able to find a more dignified way to shelter people who are in need because they've lost their home or whatever the case may be. Then you've got homeless youth. That's who I worked with at Covenant House. Right. These are young people who are, I used to describe them as, they're too old to be called kids and they're too young to be called adults. They were in that developmental twilight zone. And they would oftentimes have gotten disconnected from their homes. They would be out on the streets and would find their way to Covenant House, which is an international organization, has 21 different operations around the world. And then you got people on the street, adults on the street. And many of those people are people who have substance abuse problems, they have mental health problems, or they have both.
Large proponent of military?
Yep. In fact, one of the commitments we made, I think we are very close to being able to solve, is being able to bring homelessness among veterans in the District of Columbia down to 0. The Salt Lake City had done it already. And we wanted to be able to do the same thing. We had, through the counts that were done, my last year in office, we had gotten it down to what we estimated to be around 200
Had
veterans.
you studied the what Salt Lake City was doing?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about what they were doing and then sort of how you were fashioning it for the district?
Yeah, I mean, there's a program that's being done here and elsewhere now called Housing First. And that is the view was you get people in shelter, then you try to straighten out their other problems first, and then you get them into a home. Well, some of those problems are long-standing, and were going to be long-standing. And to be able to wait until you solved all those issues, the substance abuse issue or the mental health issue, well, the permanent housing would never come. Housing First is a concept that essentially says, we will put you in a home first. We will get you stabilized. We will put all the services around you, but we're going to get you a roof over your head, a place that you can call your home. And frankly, it's been successful here, and it's been successful now in other places. And of course, in Salt Lake City, they have used that. We've got to be able to do more of that, because again, you're not going to solve some of these problems ever in some cases, but they're not going to be solved right away. You can work better with those problems if you can get somebody to feel like they actually have a place to live,
Right.
that they're not. A lot of people don't even want to go in shelters.
Yeah.
There are people who, you know, there's people who were down in Foggy Bottom who were in those tents. There's a lady who is under the bridge, under the Sousa Bridge,
Yeah.
who is just absolutely afraid to go into a shelter because of, you know, whatever demons she sees and whatever behavior she's been subjected to in a shelter. And so we've got people in circumstances like that who we've got to be able to get them into a place to be able to live. And then you put the support, the human support services around them. The history is just the opposite. Let's get them into human support programs while they're in the shelter, and then we'll get them a place to live.
Yeah.
That's changing.
You got to flip that.
You got to flip it, and there are no easy solutions to this, because when you look at the families, they have multiple problems. You have, you know, children who may have grown up in very difficult circumstances. They may have problems themselves. You've got parents who really don't even understand how they effectively can be parents. Doing the best that they can. They wound up being at DC General, and then before that we had a place called DC Village, where these families were placed. It may be the toughest human problem that we have in this society at this point. In this city, and as every city in America is experiencing the same thing. With the individuals, if you will, these are people who have, some of them have been veterans, and it's shameful.
Yeah, I think that's what I got from my conversation with Marion, which you know, I just wasn't that aware of it before, but the gravity of the problem. You said maybe one of the most difficult human issues, situations.
Very complex.
To be able to impact.
It is hugely complex. And you know, we're learning, we're continuing to learn as we go. One of the things that we did from a service perspective that I'm proud of is you recognize that there are people in the homeless population who have substance abuse issues, they have, you know, drug problems or drink or whatever, and then there are the people who have mental health problems. But there's an overlap. 30 to 40% of the people who have one problem have the other. So we took what our substance abuse agency and combined it with our mental health agency in the District of Columbia, so that we would get all that expertise reposed in one place, and then can continue to build capacity to be able to serve especially people who had both problems. Again, if 3 or 4 out of every 10 have both problems, it just makes sense to try to bring those services together in a way that will benefit the folks who have both problems.
As someone who has been obviously intricately involved in politics, Chief Executive Officer of the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., I want to talk to you a little bit about the political climate in the country now. I heard a very interesting show this morning as I was driving in. It was a political show, and there were some there that were talking about the activism of the activism, the most aggressive activism of the Black Panthers back in the day, and how some of those tactics indeed worked in a positive way, and how it should be more aggressive tactics, especially from the black community, who remain on the lowest rung of every ladder, you know, that you can hang up in terms of lifestyle. And so one person involved was saying that she truly didn't see a reason to vote. One of the panelists said, you know, I don't see a reason to vote. And it really made me, it really made me think about the overall climate in the country that is such that someone who has expressed the kind of opinions and the kind of policy of Donald Trump to be significantly leading everyone else in that path. What does that say to you?
Well, it's a sad commentary. Donald Trump, in my opinion, has not expressed any depth to any policies that are important to the future of this country. And there are days when I can't tell whether it's a deliberate, effort or, he's a smart guy. There's no question about that. But he has tapped into, at least on the Republican side, he has tapped into a dynamic that is resonating with people.
Dynamic of dissatisfaction.
Dynamic of dissatisfaction. He has tapped into, Washington is broken at the federal level, that you can't count on the insiders in Washington to be able to get things done. And some of this, unfortunately, is attributable to the Congress. I mean, this is a Congress that has done nothing. Hopefully Paul Ryan will be able to, as Speaker, will be able to move the House forward in ways that they didn't move before. But the approval rating of the Congress is 14%.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. I actually had a conversation with a congressman about this a couple of years ago. And he said, Vince, just remember this. He said, those approval ratings for Congress as an entity mean nothing to us. Yeah. He said the approval rating that means something to us is the one in our district. Yeah. And this person said, listen, my approval rating is around 70%. So people don't care about whether the Congress has an approval rating of 14% or 12% or whatever the case may be. But Trump has tapped into all of that. He's figured out that, I guess he honed his skills at that on The Apprentice when he said folks were fired. Yeah. But he has made it clear that he will tell it like it is.
You said something. You said you can't figure out if this is how he really feels or if this is all an act. Someone you know well, Don Peoples, sat in this chair, and he said he talked a little bit about Donald. This was before he got into the race, and he said, Donald talks a lot, but I know him. And I know he's not a racist. And I read a letter. I talked to Russell Simmons a couple of months ago. And more recently, Russell Simmons wrote a letter to say, Donald, please cut it out. That's not who you are. You've been a friend. I know you're not a racist, in essence, but you truly are acting like one now. It seems, and I'm just, part of what I'm trying to maybe get you to respond to is, who has had to run political campaigns and appeal to people that you're trying to get to vote for you, where you think if it's the real Donald Trump, or if it is the Donald Trump that is only doing what he knows he has to do to get votes. After all, he made the comment years ago, if I ever run, I'll probably run as a Republican because they're the dumbest voters. In essence, that's what he said.
Well, you look at his history. I mean, he has a Democratic history not that long ago. He was very close, had a close relationship with the Clintons. So, you look at the spectrum, and he's been all over it. And this unfortunately looks pragmatic to me, that he's figured out a route to the White House, at least a route to perhaps the nomination, and he's doing well. Obviously, he's well ahead in I guess the Iowa, New Hampshire polls. He's ahead in both of those at this stage. But what America has to look at is the price that would be paid for a Donald Trump to become president, because unless he completely and radically changed who he is or appears to be in this campaign, America's in for a rough ride with this man. He represents, if you can call them values, he represents values that most of us don't ascribe to. Look how he's talked about Mexicans. Look how he's talked about Hispanics.
Everybody.
Look how exactly. He has dogged virtually everybody. And to me, Rock, is less of a statement about him, because I'm not going to worry about whether that's really him or not. What he says is him at this stage. But what does this say about America?
Y-
That stuff resonates. That 15,
tell you.
20,000 people go out and listen
I'll tell
to
you,
him stand up there and
it's
just talk about
it's
people.
shining a spotlight on something that we thought was from past times.
Mm-hmm.
But you see it out there loud and clear, and they yell and they scream.
Yep.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. You are looking at your options, considering whether or not you're going to run for Ward 7, or whether or not you're going to run for an at-large position on the
Or run for anything.
or run for anything, or run away from it
Right.
all. Yeah. If you were to run, what are the sort of the top priorities that you see that you, with all of your political experience and skills, what are the things that you feel you could most impact and are most in need of being impacted by a veteran politician like yourself?
You know, I had a chance to talk about this on Monday night at a meeting where I was the speaker, and it's hugely disappointing to me that 670,000 people who live in the District of Columbia are so incredibly apathetic about our own rights. You know, we pay the same federal taxes as everybody else. We raise our own money. They tried to shut us down, which I resisted in 2013. When the federal government shut down, it was like we were an agency, a department of the federal government, so you guys got to shut down too, which we resisted. We didn't do it.
Right.
But I never cease to be amazed that we don't have a significant number of people who will stand up and fight for self-determination.
Yell and
in
scream
this
and
city.
kick and do whatever else you got to do,
That's right.
because taxation without representation is tyranny, always was and always will be.
And it's exactly what we experience.
That's a very interesting reply for you. So first in, you're looking at a big picture.
Yes. And you know what? It has such an energizing impact on people when you get people engaged in that way. You know, somebody said to me, listen, Greg, why don't the District of Columbia do what Puerto Rico did? And that is go for a approval of not having to pay federal taxes. And that way you get compensated for not having all the. I said, I would never do that. I said, I have paid my taxes. I have bought a membership card in the United States of America, and I want it.
Yeah.
And I want the same rights and privileges that everybody else in America enjoys. And it is time for America to recognize the travesty that has been imposed upon this city, this nation, and frankly, the hypocrisy of democracy as it goes around the world talking about everybody should be, should have a democratic environment in which to live. We don't have one in our own nation's capital. We are the only one of 114 nations' capitals in the free world that doesn't have a vote in its own national legislative body. That is a travesty. But it won't change until the people of the District of Columbia decide that it is absolutely an outrage that has to be addressed.
Do you have particular strategies to start to impact that if you come back in office?
Well, some of it is just retail, and that is being able to get out, but not make it episodic.
Yeah.
Not get out there when there's a campaign being run or when there's a meeting being held and it's, you get out there and rah people. We don't have a strategy yet, in my opinion, that is a day in, day out strategy that says, this is what we're going to do. We've had situations where people were arrested. I was one of those arrested for protesting the budget. We had a situation where we had a confrontation up on the Senate grounds. Those things are episodic. We need a strategy that is day in and day out. Frankly, I think we need, we've got an organization, we've got DC Vote, we've got a couple of others, but we've got to figure out how to put the resources in place that allow these organizations to be able to function day in and day out. We have elected representatives. A lot of people don't realize that we have an elected, what do you call them, a shadow representative and shadow senators. They don't even have an office that they can feel comfortable with. They have virtually no budget to be able to operate. We've got to be able to stop fooling ourselves to think that there's not a price that we're going to have to pay in order to get this done, because we're paying a price right now. We're paying a price that we don't have the clout. Eleanor Holmes Norton has done as much as she possibly could. She's an amazing person to me.
Yeah.
What she's been able to accomplish with no vote, frankly, I've said it to her, I've said it to others, she accomplishes more with no vote than some of those folks up there do with a vote. But she can't do this by herself. We've got to be able to have in place an organization that is properly resourced that will say, we're not going to stop until this happens. You know, you were talking about the Panthers earlier. I look at Black Lives Matter, for example, and I would like to see them more resourced to be able to bring more attention to the rights and privileges, if you will, of African Americans in this country. Well, look at us in the nation's capital. 670,000 people who are disenfranchised. Our money is raised by us. It's raised by our property taxes, our sales taxes, our income taxes. When I was told that the city would have to, I got a call from the White House, the Office of Management, saying we need a shutdown plan. Shutdown plan? I said, why are we shutting down? This is our money, man.
You know, Vince, believe it or not, we're out of time. And it's said that many politicians and people who sort of make it in this world, you know, they get more mellow as they age. I appreciate very much, and I think the community does, that your fire is still in the belly.
Thank you.
And you're still willing to make a difference. Thank you so much for coming
Care
on
about
the
our
show.
city, man.
Love you, man.
All right.
That wraps us for this evening. For more information on this program or any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.